So AR shouldn't be an end to itself. It's simply a tactic. It seems like a lot of these marketing kind of fluffy type AR tactics are pretty gimmicky. They really don't provide a lot of value. They're not necessarily useful. So you know, give us some examples of where you can put AR to real use. And I guess that's maybe the technician or the developer and me coming out, and not so much the marketer. But you know, guys, feel free to jump in. You know, we can go down the row if you want, but I'm sure somebody's got some responses to that. Well, we'll start with, yeah. Why don't we start with the agency?
You know, that was agency stuff. Right? A lot of engineers. They would be very upset if you read you said. Look, I guess the short answer for us is, right, the word augment. If you're not augmenting, it's not augmented reality. And the fact is, there's a lot of stuff out there. It's not cooling reality, it's not making reality different, it's augmenting reality. So it's really about utility and value for the consumer. If you're not doing that, it's not augmented reality. I don't
What
care.
do you call the antithesis? Deprecated reality?
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's stuff. And I think there's a lot of really good uses, and some of the stuff that you were just showing is really awesome. I don't want to ask you much questions about that. But, you know, there's really good uses as far as, like, my kids love to look up at the stars and use their iPad to see all the stars. It's really basic, but it works really well. It's really good to find a car. It's really good to find utility, and if you look at some big machinery and factory stuff, looking at the factory floor, you can see things exploding, you're looking at an engine. This stuff is all really, really, really good and useful on an industrial side. It's good for consumers, but there's a lot of stuff out there, like the Starbucks thing and things like that, that it's not augmented reality. It doesn't make reality better.
Does it serve a purpose, though, because it introduces people to you know, that you can do more than just, you know, sit there with your, that you can actually use your devices and more than
I think it's agency people run amok.
Okay.
And it's really not, it's actually our clients most likely. They think that they should use it because they can. It's a lot like QR codes, just because you can. I say this all the time. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
It's kind of another extension of the, we've got to have a mobile app. Well, why do you need the mobile app?
Yeah, we got to
have a mobile app.
I don't know, my boss says we have to do in China. It's a lot of that, and I think, and really, marketers not executing well. They're sort of doing it to tick boxes. They're doing it with extra money. But they're not really staying true to the fact that does it really make it better, does it create utility, does it create really real consumer value, and we're almost kind of ruining it.
How do you handle that when a client, you know, comes to you and says, "Gee, we should do this"?
Kind of what I just said now. I mean, I say I think, and you know, a lot of this stuff was already said. Brett was already kind of killing it. And it's totally true. There's a reason why, and not to get off on like a QR code rant, but there's a reason why less than 1 in 10 people have already done it once and they never do it again. And by the way, that's generous to say that people who've done this 1 in 10. It's probably like more than 1 in 100. And there's reasons for that. The benefits just don't. Nobody goes, "Oh, that was awesome," and then I tell him, and then he wants to do it. The experiences are poorly executed. They're poorly designed.
And not very useful.
Exactly. That was my long way of saying that.
Let me just I'll glom on to what Mike was saying, being in the agency realms. About a year ago, maybe a year and a half, we were building a lot of shiny objects, and they took the form of, you know, some wacky apps. Like everybody needed to have their app, and you know, QR codes, even augmented reality. But it was, or I should say, don't discount the fact that there's executives sitting in Fortune 500 companies that want to be able to sit up in front of their board or their company meeting and say, "Look, we've got this cool augmented reality Goodyear tire app thing."
On their iPad, no less.
Nobody questions anything in terms of like, well, is it going to help me sell more tires? And that's okay, right? And you need that innovation. And the PR that these companies glean, or this unearned media, that the buzz they get in the social sphere, that they're seen as innovative company, that's a good thing. But it comes to a point, and we're starting to see that now, at least in our agency, I'm sure Mike's shaking his head as well, that now it's like, okay, now we start talking about return on investment and how we're going to sell more widgets and things like that, but still be cool and get scale. The P&Gs of the world don't care if they get 20 people to do it. They need 20 million, right? They need to sell lots of stuff. And that's what we're struggling with, is how do we use this technology to be cool and innovative, but yet still get paid because we're helping to sell more boxes of soap.
It's almost kind of like touch itself. You guys probably spend a lot of time in airports. Ever seen one of the Accenture interactive walls at the airport? 2 years ago, I'd sit there and watch, and people would just come up and start playing with it, and they'd stay there for like 5 minutes because it was so new. You see anybody touching the interactive walls anymore? No, because it's not new anymore. It's expected, and they're on to the next thing. And maybe AR is kind of in that transition period from the this is really cool to the okay, what can we do with it? Would that be a fair statement?
I think there's a lot of stuff that can be done, it just isn't being done.
I think it's in that phase for like 10 years. No, seriously, it's like, it's almost as worse as the promise of how RFID is going to change the supply chain. Right, so it's been like the biggest thing that happened for retail is like, you know, RFID is going to change everything. Guess what? Nothing really changed except e-commerce. So AR is kind of like that.
Yeah, I want to pick up on a word that you said, useful.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's really the hook around which you have to think about it, because useful apps are sticky, people use them,
Yeah.
they tell their friends about them, and so one of the
Yeah.
keys is how does AR become useful, and what are those scenarios?
So we need, I think we need to like, I think we need to, before I address that, step back and say the following, like, and say very clearly, AR is, in my opinion, is a misused term. It's a buzzword. And it's in industry, it means a bunch of things. In academia, it means a bunch of other things. And they're totally different. So, and I can explain it very quickly. So, AR today in industry means glitzy, like nice, eye-catching, normally mediated screen kind of experiences. So, you know, Sony takes it to the extreme and do it on a room level. Companies like Mattel and Total Immersion do it like on, you know, through a video, or in sports events we see it in, you know, in football, like the football field lines and things like that, and that's all nice, right? Or in mobile, you see Leia and all those people. That's all nice, but that's not really generating value, except like the sports stuff, maybe. So
Yeah, I love the first down.
yeah, so that's okay, but you know, in academia, nobody agrees what the thing is, right? And like for me, when I look at this, so AR really means, or let me explain the problems I see today in AR. Three problems. One of them, the world of experiences in AR, when you try to augment reality, doesn't work through square screen type boxes. Like you can put pixels in different places, not necessarily the screen. So that's problem number one. Then when you think about AR, you can't imagine true AR when you have a context switch between, you know, this device and reality. You don't go like that all day.
It's like me with bifocals,
yeah,
you know?
and that's just irrelevant, like an irrelevant experience. And then finally, in the mobile sense, and that's my biggest pushback on mobile. So doing this is not a good way to interact with reality. Like you lose one hand immediately when you start interacting. So to have like the device as a mediator to like even if it's mobile and it's like with
Because you have to hold the device.
because you have to hold it. So clearly, like projects that some people may have heard of, like Sixth Sense, address that in the mobile setting, and like it becomes wearable, it becomes part of your, and that's great. The problem with AR in the mobile context is one big problem. It's called the sun. Right? Like if you're trying to like, that's why we're using screens, because they're better and they have enough power and you can watch them and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's very poor usability. Like I don't think, I mean, I saw all these examples and I think a lot of them are great and all that, but frankly speaking, like visual searching that is provided as a service, say, for companies like Google or Amazon, is a commodity. I mean, the algorithms are out there, you know, doing content and bringing them to this device as an application, this form, that form, commodity. So these guys can now do it because, you know, they have creative people and capacity of engineering to actually build experiences, and so now there's accessibility to that. So Reebok can go to ISOBar and say, hey, build us this thing, right? But the real barrier is why, like, all the iOS developers are not doing AR, because there's no AR form factor. They may be some AR form factors in the future, but they're not here yet. They're in some labs. So that's basically what I think.
Move on. So, what's the coolest use of augmented reality? Maybe I should change that to what's the most useful example of augmented reality that you've seen so far?
So I can just speak, I mean,
Yeah,
I've
be
come
good.
from a more practical perspective, right? So I have clients that are implementing this, and it certainly is, I won't say it's fair to say it's first generation, but it is compelling when you show that product to the right individual, like a newspaper. Or I'll give you another example. One of my largest clients is Hallmark cards. Imagine you get a birthday card from your grandkids. You hold your phone up and you get a real-time video of the kids saying, "Happy birthday, Grandma." That is really compelling. So what we see is clients like newspapers can compel people to download the app. That's the hardest thing that I see in the business model, get them to download. But for the right person, the right vertical, the right application, I would say the right product, they get it. I was with one of my salespeople, and he literally was with the CIO of the Inquirer newspaper in Philadelphia. He saw this app in our demo, and he said, "Oh my God, you just saved my business." When I did this with the newspaper in Florida, they asked us to do a meeting in front of 400 employees and show them that app. Everyone gasped because everybody knew they were going to have a job because they couldn't visualize what they were going to do. So with that, from a more practical perspective, it might be definitely first generation from a lot of things we see here, but our view, it is compelling. We have clients that are using it in production, like Buick just did a promotional campaign application with it. So whatever that perspective is, that's what I'd like to share. But, you know, there's certain applications for it. It's beyond the tool, depending on where you're targeting.
So your clients, are they measuring financial impact yet? Are they able to begin to see that ROI?
Well, so for example, from our perspective, we're not measuring financial impact because the application is free. Now, so first generation is free, you can download it. Now, the business models are brand new. The newspaper has not fully implemented. So these are probably, this technology is about a little over a year old. So we have not seen that yet, but I'll tell you, they get it. And these traditional business models, you know, see the vision. When you get the Sunday flyer and you get the flyer from Target, you pull up your phone and literally click to buy without going to the website. Target thinks that's really compelling. And people, they have enough of a social network around their site that people will download the app as they're compelling. So I would say that, to answer your question, talk to me about 16 months.
Okay.
I think it is just emerging.
So we need another one of these next year. Other examples of really useful?
Look, I think there's tons of useful stuff, and I thought what you showed was really cool. You're trying to play a song, like, oh, it's not going to be cool. I saw that. There's a lot of really useful things. Like I was saying, like we were talking earlier about these reality, sort of augmented reality ski goggles we were talking about earlier. That I think are just the coolest thing. It has a little heads up right here below, and it, you know, basically shows you how high things are and where trails go, and it's awesome, right? I think that's really cool. But you know, does anybody else think it's cool? My clients, here's what my clients think are really cool. What we find is augmented reality is really hitting a sweet spot in retail, in what I call, and depending on what terminology you use or what you're doing, but the last 40 feet. So particularly when we do a lot of business with like companies like Adidas and things like that, and they sell a lot of things like this, right? But there's other clothing manufacturers too, or retailers like Macy's or whatever. And here's the way things kind of go mathematically. If they can get you to take something off the rack, you're 50% more likely to try it on. If you try it on, you're 50% more likely to walk out with it. But the problem is like you hit this wall on trying it on, whether it's time, lines, pain, annoying people, you just don't feel like getting naked in front of strangers at a store, whatever it is. There's this real barrier. And what we figured out was we could use augmented reality and make these digital mirrors, which aren't really mirrors, of course, they're just cameras, TVs, whatever. We can make them really slick. We can literally map you reasonably well. We have problems with sleeves, so dresses are really good because the arms can move. A little bit more problem there, but we can give you a virtual dressing room experience that will will collapse the 40 feet, so you definitely will go try it on, and then you'll go and convert. So the idea is we can compact that down using it, and we can see massive ROI. We have all the numbers that show it and how they interact with it, and then we give them all the little cool things like, you know, they hold up their hand, they can send it to their friend, they can camera or send it to their phone, whatever they want to do. But that's a real thing. It's like people come into the store. We've done all of our work.
You're increasing conversion rates.
We've done all of our work as advertisers. They're in the consideration set. We're there, and now they're faced with it. And now it's like we as advertisers usually go, well, that's not our job anymore. Now that becomes the retail environment's job, whether it's the store staff or all those things. But it's like now we can use this stuff to actually continue to close that down in a way that really generates return on investment. So, coolest thing my clients would probably say is stuff like that. I still like the ski goggles.
Anybody else?
Sort of gimmick, but about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, a company called Gold Run, they have an app, and they did something with Airwalk shoes, and they had a limited edition sneaker. And you went around New York City, and I think Venice Beach, California, and they had these pop-up commerce stores. But it was a location-based scenario in which I had to be in a particular spot, right? in the park, and a little store popped up, and I saw the shoe, the red Airwalk shoe, and I could buy it there. It's the combination of smart marketing, right? I have a limited product that you can only get by doing this in conjunction with the technology, like, oh, that's pretty neat, I get to look through my phone. They probably didn't sell a lot of shoes. They do claim that they've got millions of dollars.
Probably didn't introduce any riots either.
Right. But that kind of thinking, right? Again, I keep going back to the emergence of smart marketing along with really smart technology. Technology works for the most part. It's the other side of the equation, getting it work and getting it scaled. And to the point that Jody mentioned, that thinking on how consumers, what they do at scale, right? 90+% of smartphone users, 60% of all users take pictures with their phones. That's a scaled universal behavior. The fact that we can take a picture of something and use image rec, computer vision, to have recognize and get something back, it's simple, right? That's what Jody's, his scenario there, if we could just get people to know that they can do that by turning on their camera on their iPad, it up pops the stuff, that ease of use starts to become contagious. And that's what we're looking for, is to create habits with our users, right?
One of the things I can just outside of Nathan and I talk about a lot about this. So like that's totally true, obviously. But here's the issue, like, and we talk about this all the time. There's no common frameworks, there's no common anything, so we always have to have an app. Right? Why isn't it in iOS in the core? Why isn't there base frameworks for this stuff? There isn't, I mean, there's some sort of AR stuff in there, but not really, nothing that's advanced you ever really can use.
Well, it's open source, you can just add it yourself, right?
And then we'd have our red skill. But the point is, there's a reason why this is all very difficult too, because we have to download an app. The app might be awesome, but we still have to do all of this stuff. We can't serendipitously just see something awesome that Digitas has done and immediately do it. It's like, oh, now I'm going to do this, and then I download the app, and then it's and then, maybe then, I will hold up the phone and lose one arm, as Nathan says, and do what needs to be done. And there's real problems with the fact that there are no frameworks. Even QR codes, at least QR codes are standardized, even if the frameworks aren't the OSs. This has neither.
And you don't think that we'll get there with, accelerated, GPU accelerated WebGL and some of the other things that are coming in the browser anytime soon?
That's imagine you have the browser open all the time. I want to be able to pull out my phone, all right, and just be able to bang. I don't have to open up the browser. Anytime you put these steps in, then you don't have good native behavior. Like what Brett's talking about is, do you have native behavior in the camera? Right? We accept the fact that we have to open the camera. We all got bent out of shape when they wouldn't let us use the little button on the side of the iPhone. They finally let us do it. Because that's what we want to do. We want to pull it out and click it. And until you can pull it out and click it with this stuff, and whether it's AR or QR, any of these things, there's always going to be a problem for us to develop things that consumers are going to really scale and really do.
So it would suggest that the desktop of the device actually has to be that interactive surface.
I think that's a fair point.
I want to move on. So actually I'll come back to that question. Since you said goggles, I'm going to bring up goggles here. So last week the New York Times had a little bit of blurb about whether or not Google is introducing a set of goggles at the end of this year. I'm personally thinking maybe if I go to I/O this year I'll score a fair, but we'll see. What do you think about that? Is that kind of a next shift, or if that's not the next shift, what is the next shift? And would any of you guys actually wear Google goggles if they came out? Yeah, you can take it.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really know Google's plan. I wouldn't do it personally.
Why not?
I don't wear glasses, right? So I don't see a real reason why I would wear glasses and get that sort of terminated experience.
It's also just an obstacle, just like they already have.
Yeah, like I generally don't believe in wearable stuff. Like I can get like sensors that I wear, and I get that I carry all these computers with me all the time, and it's fine, and I opt in to use them. I also get that we're addicted to these devices, and I go through like the conversion and so on. Like part of the stuff I'm interested in is how we stop this.
Yeah, you haven't been able to let that thing go yet.
Yeah, I know. Because we're trying to think of.
I thought it was an obsolete device.
Yeah, it's true, but it does the trick for now, right? But just to follow up on the things that people mentioned here, like what I think is the limiting factor. These devices are great, but they shouldn't be like they should be like just the catalyst to our AR experiences and how they should manifest in architectural spaces. So, for example, a room like this or a store or any space that you can sort of model pretty well and embed technology into it should start responding to us. Right?
Now let me push back on that a little bit, because that's
like opposed to the goggles where we kind of we wear our own personal augmentation device and not the actual space.
But that's really kind of the leap, because like with the iPad or with the iPod or with the goggles, I can buy and equip myself personally without a massive investment in the infrastructure. You don't get the immersive spaces, do you, or some sort of massive standardization?
Here's what I'm trying to pitch that. If it's so, this is a pretty sophisticated computer. If it's so cheap and accessible to make this device, we can make other devices that would very easily fit in our current environment without huge investment. For example, if they fit in the light bulb.
Right. Right.
Right. But there are other form factors, not just this light bulb thing. Goggles is we're coming from a consumer electronic company. Like I've seen. Like one thing that you were talking with customers, and you guys should echo that. It's like people change behaviors very slowly. Like we think this is fast and all that, but this is like just the end of like 40 years of display-centric devices that we got used to using, and we're kind of okay with, and like we feel good with the QWERTY keyboard and all this kind of stuff, right? But I remember like growing up, my computer didn't have a mouse, right? It was fine. Right? And then now I can't imagine anything without a mouse. And the kids growing up today will not imagine anything without, something they can wave their hands in front of.
After 6 hours of using that, I want to touch my laptop.
Yeah. So my point is like we should to break out of this like device paradigm. It's not if we'll just bring the screen even closer to our faces and like wear them all day long. It just means another device to charge, another device to update the software, another device instead of this room should be a computer. And that's been a promise of ubiquitous computer, pervasive computer, all this kind of stuff. But it didn't happen yet. Yet we have all this technology. That's the paradox we need to solve.
Okay. Anybody else volunteer for the goggles? You said you'd wear the ski. You said you'd wear the ski goggles.
I'll wear this.
All I'll say is this.
I'll use that.
We have a pretty good relationship with Google.
So you can't say anything.
No, I'm going to go the opposite. I haven't even asked them to see, and I'm not the one. And if and when they material, I just can't. I mean, I have to go with Nathan on this. It's just like I just don't think people are ready to hang stuff on their face all day long when they don't need to. I mean, Brett's a perfectly attractive man with his glasses, but if he didn't have to wear his glasses, he probably wouldn't. I don't have to wear glasses, so I'm probably not going to start. There would have to be a hell of something going on in there, and maybe there is. But I'm not, just with the current levels of technology that I understand visiting over at your house, I just don't see that being anything I've got to just get over the mountain view immediately and look at, but that's just my knowledge.
Not to mention we had glasses for a bunch of time, right? They were available, they don't do much, but they provide like the core experience, but they didn't get that for some reason.
The best part, when the New York Times came out, that article obviously already picked up, is read the reader comments. They're hilarious because they're like, you can just see somebody driving with those things on. How do you